Je klicken, sie zastancieren, tiklin, čankoje, čan, čan, čan. Den verdienten auf mein Kasche, wo's mein Bruder, wo's zabrasch, dies geht bei ihm der Traktor wie a Bahn. Die mummele je bader kozilke, bele bakker molotulke, in čankoje, čan, čan, čan. Hechan, hechan, koye, hechan, bili, hechan, koye, chan, chan, chan. Hechan, hechan, koye, hechan, bili, hechan, koye, chan, chan, chan. Zo als jeden kunnen nur handelen, jussen fette Joch mit Mandeln und nicht sein kein Arbeitsmann. Los können so genau die Sonne, Hütten speit und im Pony, du da Kuchhof, Chan, chan, chan. Das meint voor kein Sevastopol, es ist nicht weit von sind verroppelt, unten ist a Stadt, zieh voran. Wird da suchen neue Glicken, es ist a Stadt, zieh an Antikel, in Zankoye, chan, chan, chan. Versucht das jeden kommen nur handeln, ist ein fetter Jod mit Mandeln und jetzt sei kein Arbeitsmann. Und das können so genau die Sonne mit dem Speider vor dem Pony. Du da Kuro, chan, chan, chan. Und ich
Testing. Perfect. Check, check, 1, 2. Cease, I guess you're picking up this microphone fairly well. This is wireless handheld 1. And this is wireless handheld 2. Wireless handheld 2, right? And we know the other ones were perfect.
How do we understand and identify those stressors really separated back from fiction? And I know I've got the other questions. You're going in order, that's fine.
I was going to go in order.
But I'm just sharing this with you.
Yeah, no, that's
as a
fine.
kind of
And the only
internal
thing, what,
thing.
okay, so, and I'm fairly flexible, although I'm not always that spontaneous, but I can be flexible. So the only thing that, yes, we were going to start with like a definition so that everyone, especially, I still put the income mileage. So that's what we want to determine what we're talking about. And, you know, how are they, how are they used? You have, two different ways that people use
Right,
it.
right. I have
And
this
right,
thing
right,
too.
the risks,
Right.
and then I wanted to go into, of course, on our group, so that we just have this sort of, I'll stay on topic, and then everybody's waiting for a question.
Right.
Right,
Perfect. I'm
which
with
will
you.
come,
Right.
on the impact, and so that's why I also.
And that's
wanted
fine.
to really, yeah.
Because as I was looking at my notes, and I was thinking, how do not boil the ocean, as they say, but really, how do we, so really, it's, if I'm going to be a psychologist for this, and part of it is I'm dealing with it in my own life. Social media is affecting me, and I'm astonished because I'm really a lot of user. It's like going to strip clubs and everybody lives in these places and I go on social media and see all the hate, see all the stuff on Twitter, and that's something I'm being drawn into the very things it's doing. Addictive to scroll and stuff. On the other hand, I'm seeing this showing the strength of our heart. And so I'm thinking, how does it don't know how the algorithms are working. How do you help part of what I want to do just say, I agree with you, is to talk about how do we understand social media. Also, if we're dealing with stuff that's coming on, I'm not going to stuff on WhatsApp, the stuff that is, and I'll share this with you ahead of time because I want to give you a bit of a precursor. This reminds me a little bit of, remember COVID when COVID started? Right. And everybody was locked down, and nobody was getting a vaccine. We were all on social media. People were checking that was a positive part of it. How that so going on, but at the same time, I'm feeling that the Israel thing is like we can't.
We don't want to ignore it.
Right.
But it isn't our mandate.
Correct.
So, whatever people
moderate, like
yes.
you might.
I'm going to ask you the question as we go, and then like 40 to 45 minutes in, or less, or just depending. I suspect that some of the questions are going to come back to Israel. So that's fine. Those are the questions that, well, no. The only thing saw that coming off of this interest, but no, I'm not going to stop anybody from asking any questions. The only thing that I am going to ask people when we start
This is what I got. Like she said, randomly, I'm going to be doing this talk. And she said, you know, your kids like, you can't talk shit about what's going on. Because there's something else going on that we've seen on the campuses, which is the zombie, the complete takeover. It's a brainwashing of these young people. And they have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea when you ask them. They're just regurgitating it. And then the other thing that's been created, which really is this lustish stuff. Everybody's so part of it is, so where I was going to mention the stress thing, I was going to talk a little bit about stress, and I'll tell you why, because what's happening is, I sort of want to set the table a bit with, okay, why are we reacting the way we react? We're reacting
A coffee? You want a caffeinated or decaffeinated? With what? Just with some British style.
but you know, you feel like you over prepare, because the other thing I'm talking about is it's right now
I'm reading your tea. Okay, so I actually just asked you my son.
No, I did. I taught the regular, but I couldn't get it. I was going to do it every day, and I couldn't get it. So I know.
Hi, Rabbi. Good. How are you? Let me introduce you to Dr. Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi. Nice to meet you. It's great. It's beautiful. Yes.
Mishkan as opposed to other houses.
And it's nice to see the kids coming.
Очи черные, очи ясные, очи жгучие и прекрасные. Как люблю я вас, как боюсь я вас, знать увидел вас, я в недобрый час. Уж недавно я в глубине очей вижу траур в них, по душе моей не встречались вы, не любились вы, не страдались вы, не расстались вы. Печальная, удивительно, знак судьба моя. Очи черные, очи страстные, очи жгучие и прекрасные.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with Israel, I guess. And I think another education for sure.
love to find other things, and the more you hear, the more you find ways to get involved. Maybe I'll make coffee. This weekend, lunch breakfast. I was at services. I was here for services for toppers at 9, because they're practices at 10. So this Sunday, family.
So why was there a big breakfast?
Family was getting up from Shabbat.
Okay.
It's tomorrow night.
Like bought out breakfast.
Bigger than the congregational picnic.
Like it's basically
Yeah.
they don't want to see very happy.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
They
Why?
just have bagels and bread at the end.
It was very nice, very generous. It was a big group. They were a big group.
I was like, because it was all happening while we're trying to get the kids up to love.
Right.
Our practice started, so it's busy. Nice to see the atrium buzzing. We're holding our massive chapter event, our year-end big event in the atrium in June. I just spent it. Yeah, it's a big 200 and something
Oh, wow.
in the atrium. Is that possible? How many does it hold?
You're sitting around a table, like a dinner?
Well, it's been 222 every year for dozens.
Right, but with
Stairs they wouldn't do.
we did it for Carol's English school. There was room for more. And that was standing, not
Oh, so it
sitting.
might be standing cocktails.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all this.
Hello.
Working and
That's ready.
yes, good. Sure, everything yeah. Okay, I'll get myself settled.
Hi, Jack. Nice to see you. Your ears listen.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. It's truly our pleasure to welcome all of you who are joining us here at Holy Blossom and all of you who are joining us via Zoom. My name is Pam Kapp Hamovich, and I'm one of the members of the Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative Committee. Tonight's program, The Impact of Social Media on Our Mental Health, is not only a topic that many of you, our past participants, have requested, but now, more than ever, one that we must consider more seriously during this exceptional period of time. Tonight's program is presented and sponsored by the Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative, whose mission is to provide education, support, and resources related to the challenges of living with or supporting someone with a mental illness. We believe that by talking about and supporting mental health, this initiative will work towards ending the stigma and encourage others to seek help. Our vision for this initiative is to offer talks by mental health professionals, such as tonight, create small support groups, and provide a listing of resources for those in crisis. We are privileged to partner with Jewish Family and Child Services to provide education and workshops on mental health awareness and support, as well as crisis training for key lay people and clergy. Just a couple of important notes to all of our participants. This session tonight is being recorded and will be available on the Holy Blossom Temple website in just a few days. And following this session, if you would like to speak to a social worker from Jewish Family and Child Services or or a mental health professional about any concerns you may have, please let us know and we will put you in touch with someone. Just look for one of us wearing a name tag that has LSMHI included on it. We will end our chat with a Q&A for all participants, both here and at home. Feel free to pose a question anytime during the evening via the Q&A box. And of course, afterwards, there'll be time to enjoy some refreshments and more conversation. We trust that tonight's chat with Dr. Muskat will address the many questions and concerns we all have around social media and its impact on our mental health. Thank you all for being here to learn with us, and we hope you will continue to be a part of our many programs here at Holy Blossom Temple. So before we begin, I would like to start by introducing Rabbi Eliza McCarroll, Assistant Rabbi here at Holy Blossom Temple, who oversees numerous programs and in particular, those that provide social connections and support within our community. We've asked Rabbi McCarroll to start our evening with a Jewish perspective on the role of social media and mental health. Rabbi McCarroll, welcome.
It's okay. Yeah. Thank you. We got it. We're in very good hands. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Holy Blossom Temple, and thank you for being here this evening. As Pam said, I'm Rabbi Eliza McCarroll. So I wanted to bring us a little bit of perspective, a little bit of framing about what we might be thinking about this evening as we are in this sacred Jewish space. So many of you may have heard of a section of our Jewish teachings known as Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors. And actually, the very first verse of the very first chapter of this tractate reads as follows. So Moses received the Torah at Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua, Joshua to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets to the men of the Sanhedrin, the Knesset Gedolah, the great assembly. They said three things: be patient in the administration of justice, raise many disciples, and make a fence around the Torah, the Asu Sayag LaTorah. So what does this have to do with social media and mental health, you might be asking? So I really want to pick up on this phrase, Asu Sayag LaTorah, because I think that we can look at social media as a chain of transmission in and of itself, right? We scroll our phones, we update them, and we are able to see that transmission of news about our lives and the lives of our loved ones, or whatever channels that we're following, whether it's pictures, articles, etc. That being said, we place boundaries over our connection to and how we utilize these tools that we are given, the same as we do with many things in our lives, including our tradition. And tonight, I understand that we're going to be thinking about this fence, thinking about this sayag, because when it comes to social media, we might think of it in two different ways and see its two different sides of the coin. So one is that we can look at it as unhealthy and look at this unhealthy attachment and its detriments in our lives, whether it's unreliable sources, whether it's the doom scrolling we may have all been experiencing, especially recently, meaning that idea that you just can't stop looking at the news, particularly when it's bad news. The other is to think about healthy boundaries, the other side of the fence, and to see it as this gift that keeps us connected to those that we love when we're far away, when we're on vacation, when we're away from work, and it allows us to catch up and to maintain relationships that we might not have otherwise. So we're here tonight with Dr. Jack Muskat and with Pam to examine that fence, and we look forward to learning from our guest speaker. And thank you to the Sklar Mental Health Initiative and their committee for all their hard work to bring us and to bring this event together here at Holy Blossom. Erev Tov.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Rabbi McCarroll. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jack Muskat. Dr. Muskat is an organizational psychologist with significant consulting experience working with Fortune 500 companies. He received his PhD in applied and school psychology from the University of Toronto and is a registered psychologist with the College of Psychologists of Ontario. He's also a member of the Canadian and American Psychological Associations. His clinical practice focuses on issues relating to stress, anxiety, and depression, as well as interpersonal relationships. His organizational skills offer a deep understanding of how workplace stressors affect personal health and well-being. He provides clients with insights and tools to better function both at home and at work. He has taught MBA courses in leadership and negotiations at the Schulich School of Business and has been an advisor to the Rotman School of Management. Welcome.
Thank you, Pam. Do you think we could move the lectern so that I can see everyone?
That's a great idea.
And if people want to move closer,
That's a good
usually
idea.
the seats in the front are more expensive, so we've got some.
Can you hear me on this mic? Okay.
That's great.
I just wanted to say one thing before we get started, just to give everybody here a little bit of background, that in preparation for tonight, you and I could never have imagined in September that this chosen topic that the Sklar committee chose would ultimately feel this timely. We could never have imagined, as you stated just, I think, in our last conversation, how social media has both shaped and been shaped by the events unfolding in the Middle East. So tonight, we hope to look at what exactly social media is, its ability to contribute to society, how to avoid its harms, how to navigate it healthfully and thoughtfully, and how to use social media in a way that takes into consideration our own and our children's well-being. So let's start with just a brief definition of social media and what platforms we're actually talking about so that everybody is sort of on the same page here.
Sure. Thank you, Pam, and welcome everyone. And I feel like this is quite a topic in the last 3 weeks. I don't know if those of you who remember the movie Airplane, when Lloyd Bridges said this was not a good week to give up smoking. I feel that we're living social media 24/7, and that what has happened, interestingly, and what Pam is saying, initially when we spoke, the idea would be that I'd be talking about, all right, what are some of the hygiene factors that we can be looking at social media? How does it affect our kids? How should we manage it? I remember, not that I'm 100 years old, but I remember when television came into being, and we had similar conversations. You know, what's going to happen to the family dinner? But there's something different about social media. TV was passive. It was the boob tube, and you would sit in front of it, and it was non-interactive, and it was not, you were not the content. And in social media, what we've seen, and I think we're all savvy, is how it's affecting us. And what I wanted to talk about, and what we'll get to, and I'm interested in what your questions are, not just withstanding my background in organizational and clinical psychology. I've been living this, as you all have, in the last 3 weeks, and I feel disoriented, and I feel like I'm not getting enough sleep, and I'm feeling anxious, and I'm not even on social media very much. My wife's here tonight. We don't even have a television, and so we're still inundated with everything. So I want to start with kind of, hopefully we can keep to these 3 goals for the evening. One is really, how does social media work on us psychologically? Because I think, as Rabbi McCarroll said, it's both good and bad. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. There's a lot of good from social media, but there's a lot of bad. How does it affect us? What are the mechanisms upon which it's working? How do those algorithms work? And why are we affected by them? So that's kind of the first kind of goal. And the second one is really how to understand and identify the stressors that we're experiencing when we're consuming or participating in social media. And how can we understand what's going on so that we can separate fact from fiction, and so that we can understand that it's not Kristallnacht, but it feels like Kristallnacht. And no, we're not going to have to take the mezuzahs off our doors, and no, we don't have to hide, but at the same time, we have to be aware of things. And yes, there is a lot of hatred out there, and anti-Semitism has come back in a very, very forceful way, but at the same time, there are a lot of friends that we have. And then the third thing I want to talk about is how do we develop some coping strategies so that we can, for ourselves and for our kids, understand that what happened, because we're living in history right now. We can't not talk about it. I walked into the synagogue and I saw all of the beautiful blue stars of the names of the missing hostages. And what hurts us as one people. And so in many ways, we are experiencing what social media does, but it does it through platforms. And so I looked up, to your point, I looked up the definition, and I was so surprised. You know, you always want to start with a definition. It sounded so anodyne. Social media encompasses all of the platforms and apps that allow people, creators, and businesses to communicate with one another, create online communities, exchange ideas, and share content. That sounds pretty innocent. How many people have LinkedIn accounts or on LinkedIn? Okay, that most of the group. That seems to work. Is LinkedIn working okay for you? It seems to work fine. How many of you are on Facebook? Okay. I didn't get onto Facebook until 2018. I also didn't get an iPhone until 2000. Do you know these things have cameras? I didn't even realize that. Because I was involved in, as chair of Hasbro Fellowships Canada, I had to know when events were taking place and things were being done on Facebook. So I had to get on Facebook, but it was I was surprised at what people were talking about. How many people have an Instagram account? My gosh, this is a very savvy group. I have an Instagram account because we've got grandsons and they wanted me to have one, but then they unfollowed me or as soon as I got on. So there's no post, but I have 3 followers in Japan. I don't know who they are. And WhatsApp, we all have WhatsApp. And WeChat, anybody on WeChat? No. And TikTok. Okay. So here's some facts. These are the top 6 social networking platforms ranked by monthly active users. Facebook has 2.96 billion. YouTube is 2.2 billion. WhatsApp is 2 billion. Instagram is 2 billion. WeChat is 1.26 billion. And TikTok is 1 billion and growing. And the question I would ask is, okay, so how does that play out? Why are we feeling what we're feeling? And is it for good or for bad? And I'll get to that in one second. So you look at the definition, it's an opportunity for people to get together on platforms, for them to make connections. How many of us remember COVID when it first started? The lockdowns, the washing down of counters, the masks, the not masks. This is before the vaccines. Didn't social media help us? We were able to learn online. We were able to communicate with people. I had people who didn't even like me get in touch with me to just want to make sure that I'm okay, so that when we get the vaccine, they could not like me later. Like, it really brought people together. You would see, and I think it was very, very positive at that time. But I think we're going through that now, where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of inability to understand where are things going to go with social media. But the positive aspects of social media really seem to be that there are two types of users. And I would like to say that I'm more of an instrumental user, that is, someone who uses it to find out what's going on, to make connections, to do online learning. There's LinkedIn Learning, there's other learning, there are classes, Zoom. All of that stuff is very task-focused and very much getting me to meet other communities of people that are interested in, I don't know, Scottish Highland dancing and Paraguayan flute playing, you know, at the same time. And you can find a group of people who are interested in that. You can also ask questions about what should I do? I'm traveling to this place. You know, where should I go? What are some of the things that I'm interested in? But it's also very relational. And I think for kids, maybe for adults too, but for adults, it's probably the question, is social media good for us? It's like asking, are the dating apps good for us? Well, if you're doing well, they're good for you. And if you're not doing well, they're not good for you. And you have to understand why they're not doing well. But the kids grew up on this stuff. And for them, it's much more relational. And it's really the marketplace for kids. It's emotional, it's expressive. I was doing some research before we met. And one of the weird things was it was very hard to do research because the subjects kept moving. I couldn't nail anything down over the last few weeks, but one of the things that I recognized is that it's very difficult to find a control group to do research on kids who don't have a phone or are not on social media, unless they're Haredi or Amish. And I mean that seriously. So to look at what are the effects, you tell kids, I don't want you to use your phones in the class. I taught, you mentioned teaching at Schulich. I couldn't get into the MBA program, but I could teach there, don't ask. There are ways of getting in. And there were these rules, the professors would have rules. I'm very, I wouldn't say insecure, but I like to be liked. I have a high need for approval. I wanted my students to like me because it was my first year teaching, and I didn't want to, like, you know, get bad reviews because then maybe they wouldn't ask me back. I was already feeling bad that I couldn't get into the program, and here I am teaching it. So other professors would say, I notice your students have their laptops open when you're lecturing, and I don't allow that. And I said, really? Oh, okay. So I asked them, I said, why do you have your laptops open? Because they might be typing away or doing something, and they may not often be paying attention. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, if I'm not that interesting, you can do something else on your laptop, and then maybe you'll be able to split your attention. And then I could see in their grades how that would work out. But every single student had a laptop, and every single student had the laptop open. And they were actually taking notes. They were paying attention, and they were Googling supplementary things while I was talking to find out, and they were using it in a way that I wasn't aware of. So we mentioned that we have these grandkids. When they were 8 and 9, they would be watching YouTube. They were into gaming. I don't do gaming. Anyone here do gaming? Okay, well, maybe you can help me out here. I don't do gaming, I don't understand it. They were watching guys on YouTube doing gaming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, my cousins do that.
Yeah.
They watch people play video games online, and the person will be commenting on it as they're playing it, or directing focus while they're going through the game, telling them how to do it or what they're about to do. Yeah, they watch it for hours and hours.
Yeah, and so I said, because, and my wife is here, she knows what the older one, so I said, well, and their parents are going, this is a waste of time, how can you waste your time watching this YouTube stuff? And he looks at me and he says, why do you watch cooking shows? And so the question is, what's the harm? And is there a harm to that? For young adolescent boys, a lot of the gaming stuff is a way for them to learn how to relate, to make rules, who are the characters in the game, who plays with whom. It's both competitive and cooperative. So it's a way of them using the social stuff. I don't want to sound like a dinosaur that when, my grandmother wouldn't use a telephone because she'd say, well, people will never write again or take an escalator or an elevator. But is the social media itself a problem when people can create communities and communicate with each other and text? So the positive aspects of social media are that for a whole generation of kids, and thank you for your comment. If anybody else wants to comment too, or if you've got kids that you want to, it's the way they use the medium. It doesn't take over who they are. They're just using it as a tool. It's just something they have. They text each other. They were doing it in the class. Now, I've seen some negative aspects of that, but I think on a positive sense, what the positive aspects are, they allow you to be communicating with people in a quick way. I find it asynchronous in the sense of texting. When somebody says, where do you want to meet? Where do you want to get together? I'm maybe not good enough at the actual execution of it, but it seems that this is here to stay. So that social media is very positive. If it's used properly, it creates communities, and it's the way in which people are being taught as well, through social media and through Google Groups and through other things. Are you a student?
No, but I learned a lot through social media specifically. Like,
Give us an example.
there's a whole branch of videos called explainer videos. So it's usually, hosted by people with really good communication skills, breaking down denser concepts that, might be harder to pick up just by reading on a book. And they'll have animations going as they're talking about things, and they get very engaging. And I find like I maybe wouldn't know half the stuff I know, or be able to grasp so much stuff because I wouldn't have been able to learn about it any other way. Like quantum mechanics, for example, like didn't know what that was, so I YouTubed it. There's like a huge amount of videos content about really breaking it down beat by beat. And now I still don't understand quantum mechanics, but I know why I don't understand it.
Right. But you're giving a good example of the instrumental use of social media. So if I need to figure out why my washing machine doesn't work, guess what? There's a YouTube video on it, or how to do certain things. But in terms of the negative aspects of it, and I've seen this in my clinical practice, and I brought some newspaper articles which are talking about TikTok. TikTok is bad, particularly for adolescent girls. Instagram, there's a lot of harassment online. It's not safe. There's things we need to be worried about, and Meta is not doing enough to manage that. There's the whole idea of FOMO, which I picked up. You know what FOMO is, right? Now, I got to tell you about Instagram. So I did have Instagram. So I don't know about the young people. When I see adults posting on Instagram, it reminds me of the Hanukkah letters or the annual Christmas letters. We're going, hi, just want to say hello. Here's our lovely family. We're skiing in Aspen. Here are our beautiful children. Everything's going well. Doug had a great year. He was promoted. And I'm starting my new whatever. And you just feel like, why am I watching this? Why am I getting this letter? Why are people, they're in front of the Grand Canyon and they're taking selfies. And so we've used technology to get in the way, or they're in the Louvre, if they're not trying to throw paint on the Mona Lisa, they're taking a picture of a picture. So the narcissism, the self-centeredness, the inability to actually experience things directly. When I work with young people and coach and mentor them, they say, I'm not getting along with my boss. I want to, I'm not getting good feedback. Well, did you talk to him or her? Yeah, I did. Well, what did you do? Well, I texted them, or I emailed them. I said, well, that's not talking to them. People don't talk to each other. The social anxiety that we're experiencing in the young generation is huge because people don't know how to talk anymore. Everything is done through text. And because of that, and everything has a record. The only good thing about the internet not really starting until 1995 is a lot of the bad, stupid stuff I've done isn't recorded. Unfortunately, there's still enough of a record today, but the pressure on people to look a certain way to compete. And here's the other thing that's happening with AI. I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but with social media, people are savvy. And this is the part about the psychology of it. And I want to get to the underlying theory behind of why we know what we're doing is wrong, but we're doing it anyway. There's a thing called AI enhancement of your face or something on Instagram. You can make yourself look a certain way, like Photoshop yourself. So everything is fake. You know it's fake, right? But you're jealous anyway. Or we know that people are not presenting their true selves. But are we presenting our true selves at a cocktail party when we go there? Or are we just trying to be, is social media the same as regular getting together in real time, but it's just 100 times worse because you end up with 50,000 more people who see you? And I'll give you a very simple example of that for myself on Facebook. I post very rarely, mainly because sometimes people respond and I don't want to respond to them. I have enough of trouble just dealing with people generally, and that somebody doesn't like what I said, or they don't like my post, or they start to disagree. So I don't really say very much. And I only post to the people I know, and the people I know don't even bother. But I found out what the algorithm does is it sends out to other people. So 20% of the people that get my post, I don't know, because the algorithm figures they're like the people that are my friends and they might like it. And then I'll get these friend requests from people like, I don't know who these people are, and it's very creepy. It just feels very weird. Do you know what I mean? And then I feel like I'm the product. I'm actually the product, and it's not what's being sold. Or it'll say, my good friend Pam here likes to shop at, I don't know, this store, or I don't know that you like to shop there, but somehow your name got put onto something. So it creates a parallel universe that isn't real. So the question is, if we know it's fake, and not that it's fake, but if we know it's just a certain presentation of ourselves, why does it affect people so much?
I wanted to ask you that, especially teenagers and young women.
Well, that's a great segue into what I think. In all the years, I know we've got a number of psychologists in the audience, and so I'd love your feedback as well. But when I first started studying cognitive psychology back in the day, the whole idea, the model of the brain was it was an information processing center. Computers were just coming out, and you had this, remember, I don't know, you won't know this, there was an Anison commercial. It showed if you had a headache, there'd be 3 parts. There'd be a hammer hitting part of your head, there'd be lightning, and there'd be something else. And your brain was really, there was like this executive at a desk sending orders out, and you would be an information processing machine, essentially. And that behaviorism worked that way, that we were basically could program ourselves, and the brain was where we did all our thinking, and then we would send all our thinking out to our motor, to our sensations and our motor activity. And attention was something that we would decide we're paying attention to things. But over the years, they found the theory of embodied cognition. And the theory of embodied cognition is as follows, that we think we're thinking, but we're actually reacting to emotional sensations and stress hormones and endorphins and adrenaline and the hormones that are coursing through our body. And the example is very simple. They looked at baseball players, pitchers and batters, and the average pitcher is pitching at about 95 miles an hour, and it takes about half a second for the ball to leave the pitcher and go across the plate. But it takes 3/4 of a second for an individual to perceive the pitch. So how does the batter ever hit the ball? Because the batter isn't aware consciously of the pitch until after it crosses the plate. How does the catcher, the fielder, see the arc of a ball and run back and catch the ball? And what we found is that 90% of our brain function is controlling motor activity, not thinking. And if you want to think about it, when you're trying to study something or learn something, you might walk around, you might sing it, you might involve other parts of your senses to learn. And so embodied cognition is really telling us that we feel something first, and then we add a thought to it. So I don't know if you guys like roller coasters. You go to, is it Wonderland? Is that what, anybody like roller coasters? Okay, anybody like nausea? Right? I mean, that's how I feel, but you have fun, right? Why? Okay. Right. It's a sensation. So for you, how many people don't like roller coasters? Okay. Now, it's the same sensation, but how do we attribute it? We attribute a different thought to it. And that's what I think starts to happen, is you start to feel an emotion. And one of the difficulties, and one of the things we work with both in cognitive behavioral therapy and in other therapy, is to help people push through their fear, to help them understand that it's just a feeling, and the feeling leads to a thought. And if that thought leads to a certain reward, you're going to act that way again and again. So the first time I posted on Facebook something simple, I got likes, and I started smiling. And I didn't even like the people who liked it. So I was, because it went bing, or it went, you have a notification, and it's creating an emotional response that wants you to do more. And what happens is that where people are stressed out is they don't know sometimes when they get a response whether it's positive or negative. And so stress, as we know, is a response to an external threat. And we're hardwired. It's the amygdala, it's our lower brainstem, it's the jungle. You're in the jungle, and is it a cat or is it a lion? And you hear the rustle, and you don't know. And mostly in the jungle, you'll know in 30 seconds. That's why zebras don't get ulcers. It's a wonderful book by Robert Sapolsky that you should all read. Because you'll know you're either gonna eat the threat, or the threat's gonna eat you. And that's why most animals are not as stressed as we are. But if we can't make out what it is, if we can't see if it's a kitten or if it's a lion, then our reaction to stress can be one of two ways. We either fight, we either go, okay, I'm gonna go investigate. I hear that noise, I'm gonna go see what it is. Or we withdraw, we flee, or mostly we freeze. We don't know what to do. And when we're caught and we're frozen, then we're just dealing with negative stress hormones that affect how we're thinking. When you're stressed, your body's sending the signal that you're not gonna eat, that your blood flow is going to go so that you can run, so that you're not thinking clearly. It's all about survival. And when you are unable to get rid of that stress, your reaction to stress becomes chronic stress and anxiety. And very often, many of us suffer from that. Modern times is chronic stress. I suffer from chronic stress from the traffic in the city. It makes me insane. And I just try the best way to deal with it that I can, but I already get anticipatory stress. When you have stress that you can't deal with, it becomes anxiety, and that anxiety becomes chronic anxiety, you then have what we call burnout, which is a reaction to chronic anxiety. And people react to it in different ways. There are maximizers who say, oh my God, the sky is falling, it's terrible. The world is coming to an end. It's the worst thing. I'm never gonna, get into this school. I'm never gonna have a friend. You'll never eat lunch in this town again. And then there are the minimizers, the people that just basically deny that anything's wrong. What? Me worry? I'm not gonna worry about it. I don't have stress. It's not happening. I'm just, going to have some more of that cannabis, which is another problem that people have. And so with stress, when you reach that level, for adolescent boys too, but not as much as for girls. Girls are very highly tuned to their emotions. And so there's a kind of, I won't call it a kind of mass hysteria, but there's a kind of emotional, sensational sensitivity that we've also looked at. People feel things differently. Some people feel emotions, you know, someone looks at you funny, or you feel hurt. You can feel hurt and then get over it. My wife says, Jack, you just have a hamburger and you're over it. She says, I can't believe you can actually do psychology. You have such low empathy. I said, yeah, but if they pay me, I listen. Other people are very, very sensitive, and they're very emotionally affected. And then if that's reverberated in the social media, then what occurs is it just feeds on itself. And you end up with tremendous anxiety, body image difficulties, successful difficulties, cyberbullying that can occur for boys too, but for girls as well. And it's like all the mean kids in high school, but instead of sitting in the lunchroom, they're all on your Instagram feed. And so the challenge is to manage how you're dealing with your media, how you're dealing with your social media, so that you're not prone to that.
So let's just continue
Yeah.
on that, because I think we also need the practical piece. I think many of us know and are very concerned about the effect of social media for either adolescents and certainly for ourselves, particularly right now. So can you just talk briefly about how does one identify the stress and anxiety and depression in adolescents, and some pointers, and then I'd like to ask you a totally different question related to the Middle East, which I think people also want to hear about.
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
think it's a great question. I think that one of the challenges with adolescence is that all kids mature differently and at different rates. And you really have to understand your kids, what I would call their default personality. What are they mostly like? Are they typically expressive, or are they typically quiet? Are they showing signs of being more withdrawn? Are they staying up all night? Are they not communicating well with you? Are they not doing their homework? School is the workplace for children. Are children struggling with work? Are they? And the problem with adolescence is most teenagers are kind of showing all these symptoms anyway. So it's very hard to separate that out. But if you have a sense, they may not want to talk to you, but they want you around. You know, one of the things that I think that we need to know is, how close are we to our kids? How well do we know their moods? And can we give them enough room to say that we're around, but not necessarily force them to talk? Pam and I were talking before we started, and you know, there's so much pressure on kids today to perform, to do well, and to have it visible, and not to just do well, but it has to be perfect. And the whole idea that we can't have any breaks from anything, and we have to constantly be on top of our game, is very, very hard for lots of kids. On a symptomatic level, I would be looking at whether your child is just not interested in doing things, withdrawing socially, spending too much time, maybe not gaming, but spending a lot of time just not feeling good. A lot of times when kids are bullied at school, they don't want to tell you. And so how can you find out in a way that is supportive? And I always like to say that you partner with your kid. And one of the things I do is I would talk about myself. I'd say, when I have difficulties, I like to be able to talk to my partner, or I might share something with a colleague, Do they have a buddy? Do they have a friend? Do they have an older sibling? Sometimes a sibling can be a very strong support for another child because they might have a relationship that you have with your other kid that you could say, hey, what's going on with our kid? Is it temporary? The worst thing kids need to feel is they feel that they're trapped, that they're in a program they don't like, or that they're in a school that they don't like, or that they're doing things that they're being not looked after. The other thing that I think is important is monitoring their social media in a way that you limit, depending on their age, how they use it, what they use it for. There are apps that are available that can limit that. You can also get them off certain apps where they can delete the app, but they can still keep all their data. And I think you have to be very savvy as a parent as to what they're listening to and what they're on about, and talk to their teacher as well and find out what's going on.
Do you want to ask a question right now, or can it wait? Okay, just, we have one more question, and then we're going to open it for Q&A. Okay, thank you. So clearly we know that for adolescents in particular, that the amount of time that they're spending on their devices is just growing and growing. In fact, as I was driving here, CBC was talking about how social is social media, and that adolescents are now spending 50% of their waking hours on social media. And I think for some adults now as well, given what's going on, we're all feeling a lot of the emotions that you articulated at the beginning, in terms of feeling down, feeling concerned, feeling agitated all the time. And so before we open it up to questions, you and I, talked a little bit about this, but let's talk about the impact of social media on the war in the Middle East and how this may or may not be linked to the rise of anti-Semitism. This is a big shift in
Well,
focus, but I know that a number who are here tonight are, and this has really been consuming many of us, not just what's going on, but how we're getting our information in the last few weeks, not just from television, like people like me usually just resort to at my age, but I know that my children and my grandchildren too were concerned. Thank you.
well, and I think that's sort of, I want to say the elephant in the room, but that's really the heart of the matter. In a sense, the social media, and my wife is here. We're on our phones. It's saved our marriage. We're on social media all the time. We wake up in the morning, and I'm reading something in the Jerusalem Post, and she's reading something in the New York Times, and then she's sharing it with me, and I'm sharing it with her, and we're communicating. But we're probably on our devices all the time, and I think since October 7th, we've all been. Unfortunately, this is a very difficult question because in a way, you can't be discussing social media in a vacuum. We are now part of history. We've had the worst atrocity committed against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And we're all suffering from PTSD, if not trauma in the real sense. We have to protect our kids from some of the images that are out there. And at the same time, I think what has occurred through social media was what surprised me about the anti-Semitism is I think we had, in 1945, the war ended, the Holocaust, that some people deny happened, but they didn't start denying it until 1962. So we had about 22 years where people actually believed that there was a Shoah, that there was a Khurban, that there was a Holocaust. We got barely 22 hours after October 7th before the world started saying, it's Israel's fault. What have you done wrong? And no one's talking about releasing hostages. They're talking about ceasefires. And no one's talking about terrorists. They're talking about militants. And we're being canceled. And we're seeing posters of hostages being torn down 24/7 on all media. And what surprises me, because I'm living through this, so I'm sharing this with you personally, I was surprised by the pervasiveness of the anti-Semitism globally, how quickly it spread everywhere. And it reminded me of COVID. I was thinking, is it on my counters now? Because it's not, you know, I've been cleaning this, but I'm finding it over here, I'm finding it over there, maybe I'll get it on the street. The intensity of the anti-Semitism and the glee, the absolute passion that people that hate us want to express that. And I'll say something separate about the kids on campus because, you know, I'm getting a new T-shirt that says I did not go to Harvard. And it's very interesting to look and this is where social media is helpful because I looked at the pictures of the people that are taking down the posters and they look like zombies. They don't even look like they're connected to anything in the Middle East. They don't look like they're connected to anything except some indoctrination that they have. And the third thing that I found that we're all dealing with is, and we're taking score, is where are our leaders? Where is the outrage in the world against what's happened? And so all of that is going through my mind as I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. because I can't not do the doom scrolling. By the way, you wouldn't believe this, but we're winning. We're winning in Gaza. We've pretty much taken over. Hamas is slowly being defeated step by step. The Israeli people are doing amazing things. We're doing amazing things. Social media, we raised $500 million in North America within 10 days of the conflict starting. I've never seen such unity amongst Jewish people everywhere. People I don't even, not say people I don't even know, if I look at the effects, people who I might meet and will say, did you see this, or did you see that, or did you catch this, or did you catch that? So I think that there's, I can speak now personally, and my wife can speak to it as well, we have to limit ourselves to how much time we spend on social media so that we're not repeating the same thing over and over again and just driving ourselves to despair. We also have to understand I'm on certain groups. One's called Everything Jewish Toronto. I don't know if you've heard of that group. And I started watching how people started getting really scared and squirrely and worried about what's happening in my neighborhood. And these Muslim men are walking around taking pictures of my house. Well, they happen to be working for FedEx and they're delivering a package and they're taking a picture of the package. And then they spray painted something, but it's really just the gas company spray painting where a gas line is. But that's not to make fun of people. What I'm trying to say is this is what stress does to us. We start seeing things. I had to go to my physician. I just got a new doctor. I don't look at what people are. He happens to be Muslim. I know he's Muslim, okay? And I went, and I had to see him last week. And my wife said, "What, are you going to talk about the war?" I said, "Of course I'm going to talk about the war, because I'm a pugilistic, old school, old Jewish guy. I don't know, we've been canceled, but not totally." And I walked into his office, and he doesn't know me. I've seen him twice. And the first thing he said, and it doesn't say on my chart that I'm Jewish, the first thing he said to me is, "My heart goes out to you. I can't believe how you're doing. I'm so sorry for what happened." I'm gonna have tears in my eyes now, because I'm telling you something real. The real world is full of good people, bad people, but they're full of people. And we have to take them at a level where it's not just social media. There's a performative aspect to the social media stuff. LARPing, you know what LARPing is, right? Right, thank you. LARPing is where we pretend that we're actually doing something, that we're a social justice warrior, that we're going to rip off posters, that we're going to do certain things in order to virtue signal, if you know what I mean by that, in order to present a certain way. But you know, when I talk to young people and they see this anti-Semitism coming at them, I ask them directly, "Do you know I'm Jewish?" By the way, I was doing a practice this year in Mississauga, and totally randomly, I had a lot of patients. I had like half a dozen Muslim guys from the Middle East who looked I'm not profiling anybody, but I want to tell you, they really related to me, and I talked to them. And this, just to show you how crazy it is, one of them was a Syrian Christian who was complaining to me about the prejudice and discrimination he received by Muslim Syrians. He had to flee to Beirut to go to school to be safe. And so I said, well, you might want to try Haifa. But, you know, the fact is, when you meet people on a one-to-one, you have an opportunity to talk to them and to say to them, and I'm not preaching, I don't talk about Israel, but I say, you know, I know a little bit about the Middle East. People are people, and you can find a way of connecting, not with everyone, and this is what I think is really important, not with people that are caught up in some kind of demonic mass psychosis, but with a lot of people, they're just confused. We found, you know, after October 7th, it was no longer the right and the left. It was right and wrong. You either have a moral compass or you don't. And I've lost some friends who I thought were friends, but I've gained other friends. And I think that it's important to use social media as a tool, but not to be completely taken over by it. I have Waze in the car and I use it, but sometimes I just say, you know what, I just want to get lost. And I turn it off. And so that's what I think we have to do, is we have to give ourselves some control. We have to understand that we have to get out. People are afraid to go out. We have to get out and see people. And when you go out and you actually go to places and do things, you start to see what the real world is like. I know that can I say another thing? Or
Sure.
Sure, thank you. Okay. I want to say how wonderful our people are. So, you know, I go to the JCC to work out. I haven't felt like playing pickleball. Somehow people like me to play pickleball. I just like saying the word. But I go to spinning class, and it's really weird because I don't really talk to people. No one, like, everyone's nice, but everyone's quiet. And right after, it was October 9th, there was a spinning class, the instructor, we're talking about stuff. She came and she had her phone and she had a prayer for the hostages and for the soldiers in the IDF, that we should all say a prayer before the class. Now, you wouldn't get that at Soul Cycle. And, and I thought, what an amazing people we are. Like, people knew, and we all started talking as if we all knew each other. So I think that what I'm trying to really get at is that if we see the social media as just a tool of what we're really like socially, and when I left that class, I spent the 40 minutes, and people were afraid to come to the JCC because Hezbollah said it was going to be a day of rage. I said, every day is a day of rage. Send your kid to school. They don't follow our calendar anyway. So, you know, we have to get out there. We have to do things. We have to test out our hypothesis so that we don't think that the whole world is against us, because they're not. They're looking to us for our own Jewish pride. And I think that's what I'm seeing, so.
And I think that's one advantage of being with people, having real human contact as opposed to social media. You can have these one-on-one or one-on-two conversations with people, and it can't be a replacement for that. Social media cannot ever be a replacement for real human contact.
Absolutely. Do you think we should go
I
over
think
questions?
that we should allow all of our participants, both here and at home, to ask some questions. I know we have one over there. Just before we do that, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. Try to keep your questions on a more general nature as opposed to highly personalized, just so that they can be of benefit to everybody. Those of you who are at home, you may have already put in a question in the Q&A, or you can do that now, and Tabitha will be receiving your questions, and then she will ask them to you, Dr. Muskat. Those of you who are here in the audience, we have Sophie is here with a microphone, and she's very happy to bring it to you. Just raise your hand, and she will bring it to you. And let's get started. We have a question over here.
Hi,
Hi.
Is it working? I don't think it's on.
Just put it close to your.
Hello. Oh,
Perfect. Yeah.
okay.
You've really got it. Yeah.
Not that long ago, maybe about 3 weeks ago, I watched someone online who was talking about the business model of Facebook, which is that when it first started, they discovered that people would stare longer at what was not happy and what was like the train wreck, if you will.
The negative emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, they made these findings, and, Mark Zuckerberg was informed, and a lot of people realized, like, this is actually their business model, that they are relying on people staying on because you're being activated.
That's right.
You're being activated. And so he said what's happening, particularly now since October 7th, is that particularly when you're watching YouTube Shorts and Facebook Shorts, when you only have that 30-second to 1 minute soundbite where you're only getting out of context the most virulent thing that they have said, right? And there's that escalation. And so I cut myself off. I completely cut myself off from social media for about 2 weeks, and instead did the deep dive and renewed my subscription to The Economist, and really just needed to do long form learning about everything that was happening. And I'm very grateful that I did that. That really was a lifesaver. And but what I'm really interested in, right, is the entire conversation for having good mental health. What I'm wondering is, like, there's a Jewish way of death and dying. There's a Jewish way of doing everything. Is there a Jewish way of doing mental health? Of
Yeah.
being like.
Yeah, it is. It's called Torah. It's called Torah. It's called, well, we're based on three things, and the rabbi spoke about it. I mean, we're based on a people, a book, and a land. Because, what's the point of having a land? What's the point of fighting for it if it just looks like Miami Beach? But it's also on three approaches to understanding. One is the intellectual, that is through study. The second is prayer. And the third is gemilut chasadim, good deeds, doing kindnesses. And one of the things that helped me when I was going through what you've just described was, the rabbi said, just do one extra mitzvah tomorrow, like one good deed. And I look at the Torah as the moral compass. It's the guidebook. It's like, yes, you have ways, but if you don't know the direction where the North Star is, you don't know where you're going. And it doesn't mean that you have to follow the law, but it means that there is a moral compass, and that our heritage, and this is where I get our strength, and this is what I say to young people, and it's really hard to hear sometimes, but we're a tradition that's been around, and I'm very logical about this. We've been around for like 4,000 years. Oh no, the Chinese have been around longer, so we get to wait to get Chinese food for 2,000 years. But nonetheless, it works. It's like iOS 16 or 17, and it's not Windows 95. And we invented monotheism, and Abraham gave monotheism to the world, and he didn't get a lot of thanks for it. And we gave morality to the world. And it doesn't mean the world isn't moral, but it means we can look at it for ourselves. This is not about being better. This is about going deep. You talk about a deep dive and looking at our heritage and looking at what we could learn. One of the things we've learned is you can't argue with an angry person. Stay away from anger. So there's a lot of stuff. You mentioned Pirkei Avot, not the Psalms, the sayings of our thank you. There's lots of stuff in our tradition that we can learn. I studied as a Freudian, and then I would like read the stuff in the Talmud and read the stuff from mystical Judaism, from the Kabbalah, from the 13th century, and that's what Freud said, you know, and I'd go, wow, that's where he stole it. So it doesn't mean that we don't have other ways of doing the deep dive. But I had a question back to you, if I may. How did you know to stop and get off? That's the trick. You said you were on the social media and you realized it was
Right.
a downward spiral and you stopped. And I think that's terrific. But how did you
Well,
know to do that?
okay, so what it was watching the flight from Tel Aviv arrive in Dagestan and watching 2,000 grown men destroy an airport to get to the Jews inside the plane. And like the visceral, like I'm getting emotional even talking about it now. Like I realize, like, if I keep doing this, I'm just gonna be in despair. That's not who I am. And I can do better. And I made that choice
And I think
to protect myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Well,
Bravo. Thank you.
okay, thank you. I think we had another question over here.
Just
And then
to-
we have some that have
just to
come in
follow up
via.
while we're waiting for the
via
question.
Q&A.
Yeah. The meta, the Facebook algorithms, they do work on our negative emotions, and there are 7 primary drives, 7 emotions: rage, fear, lust, greed, caring, play, and seeking. These are our primary drives, and if you notice what the first 4 were, they're all negative emotions that we have. Question?
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I see parents, grandparents, whatever, with their little kids. Little kids, no matter what they're doing, stop their play to smile, to get the right picture to post on Instagram or whatever. So there's 2 issues. It seems that these kids are conditioned to just stop, smile, and look good, and then go back to play. Yeah. So the question is how it's affecting the kids as they grow up in front of a camera. You know, and are not enjoying the moment. Maybe they're enjoying the moment, I don't know. And the other question is the issue of parents placing their kids on social media, whether it's Instagram and all of that, the whole issue of privacy, confidentiality, and permission from the kids. So again, 2 issues: not living in the moment, but living in front of a camera, and you know, having a presence on social media that you're not necessarily authorizing.
That's a great question. I want you to take it, maybe. No, you want me to take it? Okay, I'll take it.
Absolutely.
Because you were in that, you know.
No.
All right,
I'm
fine.
just the interviewer.
It's very sensitive. So it's very exploitative, I think, to do that with your kids. I think it's very naive. I think that everything, unless you're the Kardashians, everything is curated. Everything is fake. And it's fake for a reason, because it's entertainment. And one of the things that, you know, I know a little bit about entertainment. I've worked a little bit in that industry, very marginally, and my talent doesn't meet my ambition. And so I see how all these spontaneous moments happen. Even the Dagestan thing, I don't even know if that thing wasn't set up by Putin. You know, so many things that we see are fake. So the question is, what is if the parents are naively putting the pictures on, I don't know, I would be very careful. The other thing is, you're quite right. Our grandkids we wouldn't take pictures of them. They just know how to be assertive. So I would teach the kids to just make faces and not be so compliant. They ignore it anyway. The other thing is, if you think back to when you were a kid, I mean, what are adults? They're another species. So the kids are just doing what they're doing. But is there something specific that you were concerned about? Because I think it's a good question. I just don't have a good answer, because I feel it'll come back to bite someone later. But is it any different than taking your kid and putting them in beauty contests, or making your kid play piano recitals, and, you know, and stuff? I don't know.
I don't know that everyone's putting their kids in beauty contests, but everybody seems to be having their kids stop, smile, you know, do it again, stop, smile. You know, I don't like that picture. This is the picture that has to go on Instagram. And then they
Does
count the
anyone feel that
likes.
way too? Because I don't do that. Are other people can relate to this question? Because it's not that I can't relate to it, I just don't do it.
You need the microphone, Sophie.
I think a lot of younger parents are raising their children in an environment where it's encouraged to post photos online. And a lot of people don't necessarily know how to navigate that and if it's appropriate to kind of share without the consent of a child who cannot consent to put their image online.
That's a great comment. They can't consent, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you. Next question. This gentleman
Tabitha?
back there was
Oh,
waiting.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, first of all, thank you very much for coming today. I have two quick questions based on the psychology aspect of social media. So the first one is going back to October 7th and October 8th. Similar to you, one of my Palestinian friends messaged me on Facebook right away saying, this is disgusting, this is horrible, everything like that. And I asked him, you are very prominent in the community, why are you not posting on social media? Just asking him that question. And he said, I'm fearing the repercussions of what will happen to my grandma who's in Ramallah right now, and things like that. So question one about that is, what is the psychology behind the fear of people advocating for what they believe in on social media? And then the second question, slightly different, completely different, but still the psychology behind it. I work with a lot of kids and youth. I used to be assistant director at a summer camp, and we had campers who chose not to come back because they would not be able to access their YouTube or their Snapchat. They would lose their Snap streaks. So between that and the fact that it's text on Facebook and we can't see the emotions, can you talk more about how social media is taking away from the social aspect of real life?
Okay, let me answer the second question first because it's a lot simpler. It's very much an addiction. And so you have to break the addiction. So they have to go through withdrawal, and it's to their good. And any parent that would not force their kid to get off social media to go to camp, is not a good parent. And it's like anything else because it creates, it's all about the, not just the endorphins, it's the dopamine rush. It's all about the dopamine rush. And that's why I can't eat one Pringle. So I have to get rid of all of them. And so that's, I think, the simplest answer. And it's affecting people very negatively, as we know, because it's not real life, it's not 3D. The first question is really, really interesting because one of the things that I've noticed, and it's a way in which we argue with our opponents, is we do have better arguments. It's the Ben Shapiro approach, if you know what Ben Shapiro is, and basically he just takes apart his opponent. We do have a better story. I feel very bad for the Palestinians. They get up every morning. I get up every morning, I figure out what Jew created a Nobel Prize today, or didn't get, put in jail for hedge fund malfeasance or whatever. But seriously, we get up in the morning and we don't think about, did we blow anybody up? Was there another terrorist act? The history of a nihilistic death cult is very hard for a people to believe in. They've been betrayed by their leadership, whether they voted for Hamas or didn't vote for Hamas. It's 75, 80 years, the only refugees in the world that haven't been settled. Everything they do doesn't work. It's very hard waking up in the morning, and you're right. They can't come out and speak how they really feel. 20% of the citizens of Israel are Arab, and they do not want to be under a Palestinian state. So you have a group of people that, in a sense, from a psychological sense, have to dissociate and dissemble because that's the only thing that's keeping them going. We are victorious in our defeat. We are martyrs. But they don't really know how to govern. They destroyed the greenhouses that we gave them when we left Gaza. They have to live with that. And that's not easy for them to live with. Not all of them, not the ones that are all the pharmacists and the doctors and the hospitals, but seriously, they're an amazing people, the Palestinian people. They're kept in refugee camps in Syria and in other places. There's not one Arab country that has said, I will take in the Palestinians from Gaza. How does that make you feel? Can you imagine if we, God forbid, as Jews were attacked here, that we couldn't go to Israel? or that Israel, that we would not help each other. Am Yisrael Arivim Zel Hazeh. So the Palestinians have a particularly difficult story, except they're really good at propaganda and the narrative, and we ignored it because we thought the truth would win, and we got played. And that's our problem, and it's going to take a lot of catch up, and you can't deal with those kinds of questions. But I appreciate your comment that your friend actually reached out to you and said that, and I feel we have to show empathy for the dilemma, but we don't have to give up our own lives in order to do that.
Thank you.
You,
Tabitha has some
you,
questions that have been coming in.
Yeah, when you touched on embodied cognition, that stirred up a lot of people in the chat. Can you talk about the stress and the buildup and a way to deflate that? Like, there's all these things of like, oh, exercise, meditation. Is there like, like a fast exercise you can do, or, practical recommendations for when that biology is taking over?
Absolutely. I think, and back to our traditions, so one of the things that we're supposed to do, which works, is to feel gratitude. When we wake up, so when I wake up, it's a kind of a low point early in the day. My cortisol level hasn't kicked in. Cortisol is actually very good. It gets you going. And I'm feeling like, oh my God, how am I gonna get through the day? So I should meditate. But we have a thing called like saying Shachrit or saying Modeh Ani or saying something Jewish, just because I'm Jewish. I mean, if I was Hindu, I'd say something Hindu. So to be grateful that I woke up, to be grateful for the day. So one thing is to have gratitude, but then you have to have gratitude about something. So what can I do today to make the world better, to make something better, so that I can get rid of that stress, and then I would get involved in something that I would be helping someone. Getting out, sometimes it sounds trite, try breathing, try exercise. But during COVID, I would get out every morning and I'd walk for an hour and 20 minutes without a device, just to listen to the world, to be in nature, to be in the world. Because what I found happening, because I'm also very goal-oriented, I'm very type A, we all are, some of us who are, got to get a PhD because I wasn't secure enough that I was smart enough. But plus I had a great parking spot on St. George, so I stayed there for 10 years. But seriously, when I'm walking, and I can have a lot of catastrophic thinking. I worry a lot. Most of it is useless worry, but I have worry time because I like to worry. But when I'm walking, it changes the way my brain is functioning, the way the blood flow is going, the way the neurons are kicking, and I start getting other ideas, and I start to feel better after 20 minutes or half an hour. I don't know if that works for others. Some of you may do yoga. It doesn't work for me, but walking does. So I would do that. And then the other thing that I would do that's really, really important is we have to forgive ourselves. And I don't mean that we're feeling guilty about things, although we may, but we only are going to get half as much done. When you're under stress, your concentration falls, your ability to execute things doesn't work. It's like packing a suitcase. Don't overbook things. Take half of what you need and just spend more time with what you're doing. And that I think can really, really help.
Thank you. Do you have another? Is there another one?
You mentioned briefly tools. What are some apps or other tools available to limit or monitor screen time on certain platforms, with the caveat that is it wrong or harmful to monitor activity of your children if you're a parent?
That's a great question. I don't use them because I know about them. I think they're useful. I think that they can work. I often find that as soon as you try to get me to stop to do something, I want to do it more. Scarcity increases wanting. So for me, for my psychology, I know that if there's an app that's going to turn off my phone at a certain time, I'm going to try to figure out a way to get around it. Whereas if I just do it on my own through what I call it willpower, or through just ensuring that I have a substitution behavior, that's what I think works for me, trying to do something different. We read. I know we're in a synagogue and we're Jewish, and I don't want to get too much into Shabbat, but I started being more Sabbath observant because the devices were driving me crazy. And I would tell my patients, they'd come in, they're struggle with distractibility, with inattention, with anxiety and lack of meaning. And I said, have you ever thought of turning off your device? We do it like every week from Friday night till Saturday night. And a lot of these people, my patients aren't Jewish, and they said, oh, are you Jewish? Yeah. Well, you could choose another day and turn off your device. And it changes the nature of your day. And, I just think that we read, we spend time talking. We're not, it helps you understand for the 25 hours, or even if you just manage to get to 4 o'clock. In the winter, it's easier because it ends earlier. You start to see how you're controlled. Because David Foster Wallace, the great writer who said, the joke about the fish. This guy walks up to 2 fish and he says, how's the water? And he walks past and one fish looks to the other one and says, what's water? And I think that's our problem, is that we're immersed in this stuff. And the only way we know how it's affecting us is by turning it off, like at the camp.
We have time for one more. Do you have many more?
Yeah, well, there are some people that are trying to do Shabbat. Do you have any suggestions for enforcing that? Because apparently some people have not had success with that. Do you have any tips?
Well, I have to tell you this stuff. So like we go to synagogue, so we go to shul on Shabbat, on the morning, but the evening, so the first weekend that I turned my phone off and I get all these emails, I didn't tell anybody. Like, it's the kind of thing you don't tell your neighbor, hey Pam, guess what? I'm gonna keep Shabbat. Like it's like she's not interested. So I didn't tell anybody, don't email me, don't text me. And I couldn't wait for Shabbat to end because I wanted to see who texted me and who emailed me. And I saw there were about 13 emails, and most of them were spam, or it was like my Bell bill or my account or my Norton antivirus, whatever. The next week, I had 5 emails, and the third week, I had none. No text, no emails. Somehow, the blogosphere figured out that I was keeping Shabbat. I'm married to a reader. She's sitting here. We read. We look forward to it, and we don't feel we miss it. It's a great question because I never had time for Shabbat before, and I don't know how I never had time for it. And so I think that once you start a habit or routine, it takes about 6 weeks to get something going. There's a wonderful book that I've recommended by Duhigg, Creating Habits and Routines, and it takes 1 week to not do it. And I think I want to talk a little bit about what gets in our way, perfectionism. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, there are lots of rules that you have to do. There are lots of things you should not turn on lights or light the candles at a certain time, or do what you can do. Make it a day that makes it a sacred day for you. And that makes it a Jewish day, a sacred day in the way in which you want to practice it. Did you have a question? No? Another question?
I have one question that came in prior to tonight from one of our listeners. Oh, sorry?
Someone's got a question.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay, I'm just going to do this one that came in, and then I'm going to pass it over to you. And here's the question. I hear a lot about how social media affects young people, but what about the effect of social media on seniors? How can their mental and even cognitive health be affected?
Well, theoretically,
Be careful now, there's a few of us in this room.
I know. I reached the point where I didn't want to say I was a senior, and now I can't wait to say I am a senior. So I'll tell you, well, I don't know if I'm a good example. I'm an N of one. I think the way it affects us is on two levels. One, if we have children or grandchildren, we're using social media to communicate with them. And I think that for us, it's the grandkids that are the drivers. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't be that interested. So that's the communicative aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that as we get older, we may not have as many friends. Certainly men struggle with loneliness, and social media has opened up, for me, whole worlds of learning. I've been able to, you talk about quantum mechanics. I'd love to talk to you about physics sometime, and being involved in communities. I'm in 2 study groups on Zoom. One is in the US that I've been on now for a year with an interesting group of people that I've never met. We're all, I won't say seniors, but we're all learning things, and then with another group. So I think that it's a wonderful tool, and I think we just have to learn how to use it.
I think that's the issue for a number, is learning how to use it and feeling that others know and you don't, and therefore you can't participate. So that's probably another, piece of that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's a
I'm so
question.
sorry. Yes, go ahead.
After this gentleman, and we won't forget you.
And then we'll have one more, and then we'll start to wrap.
Cool. A while ago, I read a book. It was called The Delusions of Crowds, or Why People Go Mad in Groups. And in that
Charles
book,
Mackey?
by William J. Bernstein. It's a new one.
Okay.
He references that book quite a lot in it. But it's really interesting because it talks about people's emotional inclination towards narratives, and how rational thinking is the part of your brain that processes rational thought is deeper in there than the part that processes his emotions. So that's why stories always stick with people longer than logistical information will, or rational information. And I guess I was just wondering if you know anything about, if somebody is invested emotionally in a story or a narrative, what are ways to invite a broader perspective?
That's a great question. I love that question. What's your name?
Kenton.
Kenton. That is so superb, because that's what therapy is. It's getting people to change their narrative. And you can't get them to change. You get them to think about how they would change their narrative and how emotionally invested we are in things. And I'll tell you a very quick story. I had a patient who was an accountant, and he was actually CFO of a company. And I asked him, and he came from very hard-scrabble Northern Ontario town, no money. He was the only kid in his family who went to university, and he said, well, in our house, there was a picture of a general store on the wall, and my mom said that it was my uncle who owned that general store in Sudbury or wherever. And I figured in order to be a businessman, I had to learn accounting, so I became an accountant. And then he said, and then I found out years later that that was an Eaton's catalog calendar, and it was just a generic picture of a general store, and I didn't have an uncle. And I said, but you're a good CFO, aren't you? So what does that tell us about the power of a narrative? And so I think that one of the things I ask people is I ask them the question, why, 7 times. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why? And by the 7th time, the Japanese say, you'll get to the truth. Our narratives are very powerful. And in some ways, it's a balancing act between, can we just recreate ourselves and just create stories about ourselves? Or is there a truth to who we are? And I think we have, each of us, there's part of us that is part of what we came from, where we were born, and then there's part of us that is our souls that are ephemeral and you don't know why you connect with certain people and not with others, or why certain things matter to you and not other things. So I think it's I don't know what was behind your question, but I was so happy to answer it.
Thank you. We have time for one more. Thank you.
So I was thinking when talking earlier about social media and seniors, one of the things that causes great anxiety is feeling scammed or feeling not really understanding deeply enough so that we can avoid those scams, or not being sure. And for me, that has created a great deal of anxiety.
Well, are you talking about online or email solicitation or phishing, those kinds of things?
All of the above, yeah.
Well, in a way, I'm going to blame industry, and I'm going to blame the government, and I'm going to blame, and I agree with you. Why is it so sophisticated that we are not protected against those callers? We have a landline that we pay, I don't know, $80 a month so that these scammers can call us. We want to make sure that they can make a living. The problem, it's a real problem. And I don't think it's just seniors. I mean, there's one scam that they are now able, with artificial intelligence. This is about putting your kids on social media. If your kid is on Instagram and they talk, they can capture their voice and create a voice and say, your kid is kidnapped, or he's at the police station. We need you to give us $15,000. I don't have a good answer. I've been not scammed, but we've all had friends where suddenly a friend says, "Are you around?" And I have a friend like that because they're not very polite. A couple of my friends, they're just like, I need you to go to Shoppers Drug Mart and get this gift card for me. And I go, "Oh, I know who you are. You're that friend." And it turns out to be a scam. I would run it by, I'll be very honest, I would run it by a younger person. All the young people get scammed too, don't they? Rental scams, Airbnb scams. So is it a seniors issue, or is it a scamming issue, do you think?
It's not having a full understanding of how it works. So for me, I feel more vulnerable because
Right. Okay, so some basic rules are never give out personal information like SIN numbers, bank numbers, things, even whatever. I got a thing from RBC, which we bank. I phoned my bank and asked them, "Would you have phoned me for this?" They said no. I actually phoned the number, just to let you know how sophisticated the scam was. The number that they had on the back of my card somehow went to another number where they said, "We will answer your question for $3.30 for the next 3 minutes." So I just hung up. My wife and I said, never answer the phone by saying hello or yes, because that will trigger some robocall thing. So I answer the phone. If there's no caller ID, I go, or I go, or I don't say anything if they don't leave a message. I also go to the website. So if it is something legitimate, I will go to the website browser and see if, like, Google might say, "We've noticed some suspicious activity in your Google account. Click on this link." Well, I'll go to the browser. I won't click on the email. That's about all I can think of. Yes?
Okay, a short question and a quick answer.
Try and make it fast.
Okay.
I guess I'm wondering about the permanence of the effect that social media has on people. Like, I know most of us, if not all of us, I know we've been experiencing this surge of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and all that. And I think for me, and probably for everybody else, it's been on social media and not, on CNN or Fox. And what I saw this morning walking to work on a bus stop was some writing saying, Zionist genocide, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom it said, erase it, it doesn't matter, like to erase the message. And they might have meant something else by that. But for me, it freaked me out thinking that this is all over social media and everyone's seeing it. So does that make it permanent? Like, will this have a long-term effect on what people view, how people view Jews in Israel? Or, if social media were to be eliminated tomorrow, would everything go back to normal?
I have a thought. I think that basically all of this stuff is just, they're looking for the winning horse. Once Israel starts winning, the Jews will be back in business. Remember COVID? Remember Israel got the vaccine? Remember how the world loved Israel because we got vaccines for them? Europe, when Europe was fighting terrorism, they used Israel's counterterrorism experts. The mob will move on. I think that, I have to think that because the nature of what created it doesn't have any depth. The people that are writing this stuff, it's 100 miles wide and 1 inch deep. Yes, there is real anti-Semitism. Yes, there is real hatred, and we're seeing it. But the world is changing. This has been an inflection point, because if Israel doesn't win, Europe is next. This is a fight for civilization. And I think that we know it, the Israelis know it, and we're gonna win, and we are winning. So, and I think it's really hard to be an anti-Semite. It's not much fun. You don't have very many friends.
So most people are just, jumping on the anti-Zionist, anti-Semitism bandwagon that is on social media, instead of being actually anti-Semitic.
I agree.
Let's end with your comment, we're winning. And let's hope that there's peace very, very soon. Anyway, I know that there's probably many more questions, which is always a good sign. But we really want to thank you for lending us your expertise and your time.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
You really have given us a lot to think about. I think sometimes there's more questions afterwards than there are answers, because we've talked about a number of different things, some practical guides and reassurance. And many of us have had questions or concerns about our own usage, and others, like myself, have had concerns about social media and the impact on our children and grandchildren. But with your help and many of the wonderful questions in our Q&A, you've provided us with some good knowledge and some tools to assist us all in navigating the social media landscape, particularly through this difficult time. So first, the members of the Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative Committee have made a contribution in your honor to Magen David Adom Canada with our heartfelt thanks. As well, our Temple Library has a dedicated space for mental health topics under the Luke Sklar Mental Health banner. And one of the books that you have recommended, called Stolen Focus, Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again by Johan Hari, has been purchased and dedicated to you with thanks, and will be in our Temple Library downstairs in the Luke Sklar Mental Health.
You have to have the attention to read it.
Yep, absolutely. It's actually it's got a lot of very, very good suggestions. And for those of you who wanted to know about taking a social media break, I think there's also some very good information there too. For those of you who have registered, you'll receive a survey in the next day or two by email, and we ask you to take the time to fill it out, as it really does help guide our future programs, such as tonight's. Included with the survey will be some excellent resources prepared by Dr. Muskat, should you wish more information and guidance. So we thank you for that as well. Donations to Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative are always welcome. Your contributions allow us to educate and support the community in the area of mental health. So perhaps think about making a donation in honor or in memory of a special friend or a loved one. And lastly, there's some information on the table if you want to help yourself. And please feel free to stay, have some refreshments, and continue chatting with each other. You're more than welcome to stay. And we wish you all well, and we thank you for joining us to be part of this very important conversation. Shalom. Thank you so much.
Chitty bitty 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 bum bum. Chitty bitty 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 bitty.